pase, pierna derecha, directo al arco, ¡golazo! ¡Golazo!
The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee, live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
And good day, good night. Welcome to Soccer Today for Monday, March 26th, 2018. Duane Rollins is on the line as well. Duane, welcome to the brand new studio. And before we get starting today, I just wanted to let you know, Duane, that it's 80 days until the World Cup.
Is 80 days to the World Cup. Tomorrow's my 1,000th show, too. So there you go. Well, we'll have to have a cake for that. Is there going to be a cake arriving at my studio tomorrow, Kevin?
Oh, there'll be a cake in studio. Can you be here? We'll see. I'll have cake. I don't mind.
All right, fair enough. All right. Now, 80 days. Wow. Yeah, it is coming up so fast and so much to happen in between, though. Obviously, we have the CCL that's quickly approaching its final. We obviously have the UCL, which is, everyone's favorite competition every spring, and a lot of fun stuff going on. And starting to break. It's still cool out here, but it looks like spring. It's starting to feel a little like spring's coming.
Yeah, but snow's coming on Sunday, so we'll wait to appreciate. A lot of friendlies this weekend, and we'll start with the one that caught our attention, Duane, and that's the Canadian men's national team playing New Zealand in Spain in front of no one on Saturday at 11 a.m. And yeah, it was a okay game. It was a result that Canada will take, a 1-0 win with a goal by St. Ricketts, his first goal in 2018. But for Canada, it's a win. First win under John Herdman. It's positive, right? It's positive.
Well, a win's a win's a win. Yeah, look, I mean, New Zealand's a team that Canada should be competing with. I think that that's the case. I mean, this is a team that we've seen compete at the Confederations Cup and do fairly well against the bigger clubs. So if you're able to go in and get a result against them in a close door friendly, that's keep things in perspective. But nonetheless, you're not looking embarrassed out there. New Zealand probably had the better of the play for the first 10, 15 minutes, and then after that, I think Canada had the better of the play for the rest of the game and got the goal in the second half. So it was a fair result overall, and you got to like that. I don't know if you're going to take anything out of it in terms of long-term viability of John Herdman's plan or anything, other than the fact that we had some younger players that showed up and did well, and I'm sure we're going to talk about one in particular in a moment.
Very soon.
Look, a win is a win is a win. If you're the Canadian men's national team, you're just happy to get a victory. And they're the most disturbing thing I heard from the game is the fact that Gavin Day, who we're going to have on tomorrow, by the way, if we can get him, he's going to be back in Toronto, so it should be fine. We'll talk about his experiences over there, but he was suggesting that this will be Canada's last friendly until the Nations League starts after the World Cup. So that's unfortunate, but at least they have a win under their belt, and we can move forward. And the Nations League will provide Canada with an opportunity to get that FIFA ranking up a little bit, somewhere where it belongs, which is somewhere around New Zealand, I would suggest.
Yeah, where is New Zealand? 60th or something around there?
Off the top of my head, I wouldn't know. Will you give your thoughts on the game? Well, I look that up real quick. How's that?
Absolutely. I want to talk about Liam Miller. One player that we've been talking about on Soccer Today and Two Solitudes a few years ago when he signed when he was announced as a U18 player for Liverpool. We're like, oh wow, a Canadian teenager just is now with the Academy of Liverpool. Let's see what happens with this. Few years removed, now Kids is playing U23 with Liverpool, close to breaking the first team lineup, and had his first cap for Canada on Saturday. And Liam Miller almost scored 2-3 goals, was influential in his debut for Canada, and on top of it, seemed to have found chemistry with players that he never played before. And for a kid that's outside of the national program because he was in Europe for a long time, this is positive. Liam Miller arriving on the Canadian scene and influential in his debut.
No, absolutely, yeah, and he was the talk of everyone, and not just Canadians either. There were a few people watching this stream out there. I suspect they were gamblers, but anyway, watching the game, and a couple people that were outside of Canada said that Liam Miller was the most impressive player on the pitch for either side. And he was creating off of that flank, providing some excitement out there. You've got a lot of sort of young, dynamic attacking talent on the Canadian side for the first time in a long time, and that's exciting. Well, this is a player that we've been aware of I first became aware of Liam Miller probably
3 years
3
ago?
years ago
Yeah,
now.
that's what I was thinking, because he was 15 when he first joined the Academy of Liverpool. So.
Yeah, and I got a message from, I think it was his father, but someone close to him that telling me tell me about him, because he wasn't a guy that was really, being talked about a lot in Canadian circles until he went to Liverpool. He had connections to get over there, and I do believe he does, if you want to be a paranoid Voyager, I do believe he does have the ability to represent England, but no one's talking that he's going to do that at this particular point.
Well, he played for Canada on Saturday, so there you go.
Yeah, it didn't cap time, but that suggests to me that he's thinking of playing for that. This is a guy, when we first saw him in the under-20s last year too, that he looked okay, but he didn't. I was disappointed, actually, to be honest, with his play with the U20s. Everyone was disappointed on that U20 squad last qualifying campaign, to be blunt. But yeah, it was night and day. He's working under Steven Gerrard closely. A lot of Liverpool fans listening to this, I'm sure, that are excited by that there's a Canadian working closely with Steven Gerrard, and Steven Gerrard is high on this kid too. He talks about him all the time in the Liverpool press. This is a player that is not, just making up the numbers in the Liverpool Academy. He's a player that the Liverpool Echo has written about a couple of times. This is a player, as I said, that Steven Gerrard talks about all the time. This is a player that Jurgen Klopp is aware of. This is a player that might, because Jurgen Klopp is a guy that likes to give chances to young players, that I could see getting a run out in a League Cup match or something next year. So,
Saturday,
exciting stuff.
Saturday at about 5 p.m., I put on my Facebook page, Liam Miller, I'm duly impressed. And knowing Jurgen Klopp, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he gets a chance real soon with the big club, right? We all remember what Klopp did with Borussia Dortmund, the likes of Aubameyang, all the young crops of the last 7 years before he joined Liverpool was from his tenure. We're grown up with this tenure. And you mentioned the work Steven Gerrard is doing with Liam Miller and the work of Jurgen Klopp, and I'm not surprised at all if Liam Miller becomes, I wouldn't say a regular and a starter in the Premier League before long, but a suitable replacement for Firmino. And the more Liam Miller shows, more minutes he might get and less Firmino might get. So you're talking about a Canadian kid who's trying to get a spot off a top Premier League team off Firmino. Not bad at all.
Yeah, and look, I think Liam Miller's near future might involve maybe a look, in a League Cup match or something equivalent for Liverpool next year, and then maybe a loan. And that would be something that would be positive if he could get into regular playing time in the Championship when he's a little, a year or so from now. That's a nice little evolution for him, and then hopefully eventually he does make Liverpool or solidifies himself somewhere else. I think when we have players that are on, quote unquote big name clubs as kids, we're like obsessed with the idea that they have to make that club when really, that'd be ideal. But any club that they make and can get regular time in is a positive development, and you hope for the best for him to get the highest as possible. But if he goes on loan to Sunderland, who might very well be in League One next year, probably will be in League One next year, and is playing regularly for them and helping them get promoted back up to the Championship, then that's a positive. I don't know why I picked Sunderland, I just did. But that kind of type of stuff would be ideal for him, I think, at this point in his development.
Because they're Black Cats
and they're ranked 120th below Canada. So anyway.
Wow. Oh, well, there you go. But you talk about Sunderland because they're Black Cats and they're running out of 9 lives. They're running out of lives and they're going down to League One. One thing I wanted to mention too is for the Montreal Impact fans out there, supporters that are listening to our show right now, Michael Petrasso got injured on Saturday. We'll wait till we hear more details about the injury on his return with the Montreal Impact today or the next few days. The MLS content on this squad and the level of the MLS content on this squad, am I mistaken, Duane? Or is the level rising? Just bear with me for a second. We had great players, De Rosario, Patrice Bernier, Andre Aneau, even a few years ago. Is it me or this crop, this generation, which we could say is led by Piet right now, is gaining traction in this league and is gaining a confidence for young players, the Petrassos, the Edwards, the Piet, the Ricketts? I wouldn't consider him a young player yet, but still. Yeah, I was quite that turnaround. It surprised me. I don't know. I'm surprised by Canadian content in Major League Soccer in 2018.
it is increasing. There's no doubt. I am still disappointed at where it is when I put myself in my brain from 12 years ago when they came to Canada, but it should be higher based on that. But it's finally starting to get some traction. With the Canadian Premier League coming in, I think it's going to force the issue a little bit more, and I do believe that you will see an even more loosening of Canadian restrictions within MLS once Canadian Premier League starts, because MLS is going to want to, they're going to fight back, right? They're going to want to get their best players. I think the player, not to belabor this is the guy that's been on this show that's a quote-unquote friend of the show. He's a good guy. We're cheering for him clearly, and that's MAK. His journey, I think, is the 2018, the modern 2018 Canadian national team player that we would not have seen a decade ago. He would have been playing in some men's league and ripping it up, a decade ago, and now he's a national team player. And that's, I think, because that pathway has existed for him to go through it, MLS Academy, not quite make it, bounce somewhere else, find playing time, and then eventually work his way back to MLS. Yeah. Where he's still young enough to make an impact. That to me is that pathway that didn't exist even 6 or 7 years ago that does now. He's the who I'd put on the pedestal to go. That's what the benefit is right there.
MAK, good. It's true. And it's a player that established himself outside of a Canadian academy. And there is going to be in the next few years a certain disparity of what Canadian teams think of their own homegrowns and what the rest of the league thinks of the Canadian homegrowns, just because there's a certain bias when you bring a player through, when you're teaching them everything you know, and you have high expectations, doesn't meet them. And we've seen this with MAK, and went down to Lou City, rebuilt his confidence, his reputation, and was able to make the jump to LAFC, a brand new team that needed players, and he was one of those players chosen to be part of that roster. No, it's true what you're saying, Duane, and I really feel that sometimes it's hard to be good at home. It's hard to establish yourself away as well, and I think that there's no favorite pathway, there's no favorite blueprint, there's no it's not an exact science. But when you look at this crop of players, when you look at Samuel Piette, probably the most mature early 20-year-old I've ever seen in my life. Petrasso, the same damn thing. MAK, Edwards, yeah, those young players nowadays are pros, and they've been pros for a long time. I think it shows. Even though they're 24, 23, 22, you're looking at players that are pros in how they handle themselves, how they handle their body, nutrition, how they handle the media, how they portray. It's refreshing, I would say, because it's not just when we use the term professional, and they're not just giving us nothing. They're just authentic at the same time. And yeah, millennial soccer players are kind of cool, actually. Yeah.
There you go. I think to go back to Marquez Niquet a little bit, another thing that I think is worthwhile pointing out with him is that the rule that MLS did change last year, where players that developed in an MLS academy and then were later let go can, as long as they were there for 2 years before the age of 16, they can then be eligible to be domestics in the United States, right? That he would be a guy that, had he been released by TFC Academy now, as opposed to when he was, would have been immediately eligible under that rule. He's not now. He had to go back around. But if he was just a little bit younger, he would benefit from that rule, because he did start with TFC Academy. They couldn't find a position for him. He's completely switched his role twice in his career already. He, when I saw him in League One Ontario, he was sort of an attacking wide midfielder, and he was quite successful at that, scored a lot of goals. And then when he went to TFC2, they tried to make him a fullback, and he struggled a lot there, and he just couldn't fit in. They felt that was his position. That's why they released him. And now he's more of a central destroyer role for LAFC. So it's just a guy that's evolved 3 times, and he's been offered the opportunity to do that because he's remained in a pro environment. And as I said, that's not something we would have seen a few years ago.
No, it's not at all. So, to wrap up this Canadian men's national team friendly versus New Zealand, onwards and upwards, one thing I wanted just to touch on before we wrap with the Canadian men's national team is John Herdman's debut. It's hard to evaluate or analyze the job of a coach, of a manager, of a squad builder after one friendly versus a sub-bar opponent. But what can you say about the debut of John Herdman?
it didn't, players showed up and it didn't go badly, I guess is all you can really say after one. Look, and the only thing that you were going to take away from John Herdman was something negative after one friendly that you could barely watch, right? We talked to Gavin from Spain, and if you had difficulty hearing that interview because of the connection issues, I'll sort of repeat a little bit of what he said. I asked him whether he noticed any difference in how John Herdman was running training with the men versus the women, and Gavin, who covered the women very closely in the run-up to 2015, so he knows the Canadian women's program very well. He knows John Herdman's style very well, said no, that it looked exactly like a women's training session. He was doing similar drills, similar things. The only difference he mentioned was that they actually had a drone flying overhead that he was trying to, get above images to help them with positioning, I suppose. I mean, we don't know, but I assume that's what it was about.
Yeah, so, it would make sense, like an eagle-eye view of the training or of the scrimmage or whatever, yeah.
So, yeah, this is a manager, and what Gavin said that day as well is that this is a guy that is not afraid to try stuff. He's younger for an international manager, for sure. I mean, he's 41 now. He's not, 22 or anything, but he's a young international manager, and he's innovative in terms of the stuff he's willing to try. So maybe if he's talking to other millennials, he might be able to relate a little bit more than a Benito Floro than an Oz might have, because those guys were like grandpas, right? As opposed to this guy who looks more like their dad. So it's something that might help them out maybe a little bit. We'll see. I think that I'm going to reserve complete judgment on John Herdman until I see kind of whether some of those guys, those notable absences from this camp, were notable absences because they chose to stay away because of club situations, or whether they didn't want to come. That's the issue that I'm concerned about. If Lucas Cavallini stayed in Mexico because he wants to establish himself down there and get that loan extended, which is most likely, then great. If he was like, I don't know if I want to come, then that's a problem. So let's wait and see what the next call-ups look like. But there was nothing jumped out negative, for sure.
All right. Well, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll touch on other friendlies in the world of soccer this weekend.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at SoccerTodaySPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network. You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.
And we're back on Soccer Today. Duane Rollins with myself, Kevin Laramee. You can follow Duane on Twitter at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramee. The show is at Soccer Today SPN. And there was like a bunch of friendlies this weekend, and we're not going to go through the scores of them all. The one that really caught my attention was Friday. Was Friday or Saturday? Anyways, it was France-Colombia. And it was 2-0 France at Stade de France, at home. Party was in the stands. Party was everywhere. But some Colombians decided to crash that party. And they scored twice. And late, in extra time, Umtiti. Foul in the box. Penalty for Colombia. And Colombia beats France at home 3-2. First time ever Colombia beats France. I was watching the game with one of my friends who is French. Even though it's a friendly, Duane, he was mad as I never seen him. He was like, this is unacceptable. This is not okay. We cannot lose at home against Colombia. This is not acceptable. We're going to get eliminated in the group stage. This is a shame. This is unfortunate. This is a calumny. I was laughing, but that just tells you sometimes that we're not used to having pressure for our friendly games. But I guess some country do.
Was that your Parisian accent, Kevin?
I was trying to go with a Paris accent. I would say somewhere maybe more in the Languedoc, like a little more obscure accent.
Okay, fair enough. All right. So yeah, you wouldn't pass if you were trying to, over there. But nonetheless.
Okay, I'll talk with my real French accent like this. I would pass very easily in French. How about you give me a croissant?
Fair enough. I'm not going to do this accent. But yeah, look, I mean, what I'd say to your friend is that you're maybe disrespecting Colombia a little bit with that take, because Colombia, if we remember back 4 years ago, they were the darlings of Rio in many ways. And if it wasn't for kind of couple unlucky bounces and perhaps a couple unlucky calls against Brazil in that quarterfinal, they may have been the team that was, sent to the slaughter against Germany in the semis. Who knows?
They would have maybe lost 7-1.
Yeah, exactly. So the Colombia's a good team. France is, we were saying off air, France is so hard to handicap when you're talking about any major competition. They can go out in the group stage or they can win. And that's kind of been their history. And we've seen them. Yeah. And we've seen them almost win 2 Euros. They've won 2 Euros, I think, since I can remember. I'm trying to think off the top of my head here.
Well, almost a World Cup in 2006, too, if it wasn't for the famous headbutt. And
they've been in 4 finals in recent, in the last 20 years, right? So this
they were
is
in the final 2016, and they lost. So there you go.
Yeah.
You're 10 years apart, 2006. They lost the final to Italy, and 2016, Germany.
Yes, and then they also were in a Euro final a couple of years before that, 2004, I believe. No, 2004 was Greece. I don't know. There's too many tournaments, Kevin, but regardless, France is good. Look, they can win, they can lose. It's hard to really get a great handle on them. I still am inclined to think France is going to have a good World Cup. They're one of my pre-tournament favorites, but I wouldn't put too much stock in a loss to what is a very good Colombian team. I think a lot of people, when you're having European World Cups, which this, I guess, is, well, Russia, as I said the other day on Five Rings, is kind of its own thing. You tend to pick the European teams over the South American teams because of history. But we saw Germany buck that trend in the last World Cup. They, as a European team, won in South America. So I don't think I'm going to give much stock to the South Americans can't win in Europe theory until I see it play out again.
That's true. And I said Germany. Of course, it's Portugal that won the Euro in 2016.
Yes.
It's not Germany. It's just whenever I'm thinking of soccer tournament, I usually think that it's a game that finishes with Germans winning in penalties. So sorry for that. But that's just my English heritage, I guess, that's coming through. But when we're looking at this whole weekend of international friendlies, some of them are more important than not, just because we're 80 days away from the World Cup. Duane, when you're looking, I will get Duane on the line here a second. It happens. Live radio. But when I'm looking at... we got Duane back. When I'm looking at the importance of friendlies for a team in the World Cup, we're 80 days away. This is one of their last competitive games before the World Cup. Duane, I'll put you in a role of a manager of a national team. How important was the game the weekend or the game coming up today and tomorrow when you're looking at your potential 23-man squad heading into Russia?
I think you're looking at it, like 18 to 23, like that. It's important for certain players. I don't really put much stock in the results in these pre-tournament games. How Canada, they drew Brazil in 1994, right? I mean, there's not a lot to the results. It's not even about fitness. It's about the battle for the final position and trying to understand exactly, or get familiar with the style, or to get familiar with tactics or whatever. I mean, look, that's exactly what it is. It's important for players that are on the bubble. And for some nations, there really aren't any players in the bubble. They know exactly who they're taking because the managers, those bubble players are often guys that the managers like for certain specific things. Like maybe one nation might prefer to bring a free kick specialist on, or a penalty specialist even, in case they go to penalties. If you're a strong enough nation, you can afford to make decisions like that. Sometimes you'll make a decision that you might bring a veteran on that you just like to have around the team, for leadership perspective, to help them in the camp, and they might not even see the field that much. So those kind of choices might already be made. But for other nations, you are looking to maybe, by merit, find some positional players out, on the pitch for the way they play in those friendlies. But there's not a lot in there. It's purgatory. It's purgatory for everyone. Waiting for the World Cup to start. Once World Cup starts, then we can start thinking about the next cycle. But this period after qualifying is over, it's purgatory period.
It's always what's next, eh? It's never what happened. It's always what's next. All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on those games and, of course, the injuries and anything that's going on, because we are 80 days from the World Cup, and it's going to go by really quickly. When we come back, we will be talking about Major League Soccer, the few games that actually happened during international break, and we'll give our Ballon d'Ors, Ballon de Silver, Boule de Bronze, and Boule de Bois.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at SoccerTodaySPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network.
We're back on Soccer Today. Duane Rollins with myself, Kevin Laramee. Major League Soccer week number 4. International break not respected.
No. Yeah, well, that's our wood. And it's an ongoing issue, right? Look, in this particular time in MLS's evolution, they do allow teams to choose, which is an improvement over past years. But I almost find it worse because, particularly the Whitecaps, which is a team that we cover fairly closely in this show, they always choose to play on these games. And my mind is like, why? Like, why are you putting yourself at a disadvantage? I don't get it. Like, what's the thinking here? Why do you always want to play this? And they do. They always choose to play on these things. And this particular break, because the U.S. is not involved in a real way. Obviously, there is there's a camp, but it's not the best players. It's not the players that they would be playing if it was a competitive fixture. So it takes less impact on what you would have seen in the past. But it's just, I don't know. Can you not figure out a way to not play on these dates, or to at least limit it to absolute necessary? Like, maybe if there needs to be a reschedule. For instance, TFC has rescheduled that game against DC that was scheduled to take place midweek next week. They have rescheduled that to take place during the World Cup. Normally they would be off during that time because TFC chooses to go off during international breaks, but they chose to play this game because it makes more sense from a competitive standpoint to move it in that. And I'm okay with that when it's an emergency, but by and large, teams like Colorado, they always play in these things. They just don't.
Yeah, well, they're going to lose any players outside of Tim Howard, and the U.S. are not even playing this time around. And yeah. I'm a bit happy that Montreal are respecting the friendlies now. Because if you look at the Montreal Impact squad, you got a few Canadian international, and you got a few international of other countries, French sometimes, but yeah, you do have some other international players. And it's kind of giving yourself some rest period, especially the ones in the beginning of the season where fitness-wise, especially when you're looking at how Montreal played a lot of different playing surfaces, the first 5 games, 4 were on turf. So there's all those aspects, older legs, older players. You kind of don't want to stress the muscles and the joints and the ligaments too much early on in the season, especially if you do have a lot of international players. You want to ease yourself into the season, right? You don't want to start too hard and pull a hammy and be done for 3 months. So I kind of understand why, and I'm kind of happy for Montreal Impact fans that they think of their players and the long season ahead and the different competitions with the Canadian Championship and Major League Soccer. And I wouldn't want to say lack of depth anymore with the recent acquisition, but to work on that depth and not jeopardize it, they decide not to play. And it's a positive sign if you're a Montreal Impact fan.
No, for sure. It's better to rest in these periods, this period of time. I mean, it's early in the season, too, when you have a new coach and sort of a new direction. To have another week of full practice is going to benefit them as well, right?
Yep.
So you look at it that way.
More time, slowly, with the weather becoming better, finding maybe times to go outside. Yes, there's been snow lately, but it's close to the time where we actually take ownership of our outside field, so it is positive.
Yes, Canadian soccer. Canadian Premier League will be a summer league, by the way, folks. That's because we're sensible.
Yes, because we're... All right, Boule de Bois was the international break, not respected by Major League Soccer. The Boule de Bronze for week number 4, Duane.
That would be Mr. Blanco from Portland, Sebastian Blanco. And I'm going to give this bronze not just because he scored a very important goal for the Timbers, who are struggling early on this year. And they were losing the game on the weekend as well until he made an absolute blazing curling shot that drew this game up. Now,
it's crazy.
If you're Portland,
you say curling shot? I had the Jennifer Jones triple takeout from last night, but that's another shot, right?
Yes, exactly. Jen Jones is a pretty good curler, and that's for a different show, though. She would have won the gold in Pyeongchang, I'm pretty sure.
Yep, that's what I texted you last night. But anyways, the Blanco curling shot.
Yes, exactly. It was a beautiful shot, and it was an important goal for Portland. To sort of get out of their sort of, malaise that they're having early on in this season, that they were one of the favorites in the West, and they have not started as such. They did manage. It's still only a draw, but I think sometimes when you're early on and you're struggling, you take little bonus moments whenever you can get them to help you along and help you get moving in the direction that you think you should be going. So Sebastian Blanco, for his brilliant goal and for his important goal for the Portland Timbers, is my bronze medal performance, bleu de bronze, for week 4, week 4, right?
Yeah, yes. Week 4. Boule and Blanco is a very good choice. Now, Boule de Silver, before we go to the Ballon d'Or for the week number 4, Boule d'Argent for week 4.
The Argent. It is Mr. BWP from the New York Red Bulls, which are fast becoming one of the most impressive clubs of the early part of MLS season.
On 2 fronts. I'm still surprised they're able to battle well on 2 fronts early in the season like this. Hats off to the training staff, getting the players ready, and lots of players ready for all those games they've been playing.
Yeah, and a lot of that has to do with their depth and their ability to bring those young players in and rely on them and just throw those games to them and say, you know what, it's yours to win or lose, and they split them. And I bet you going into those 2 games where they decided to do full rotation, they would have taken probably 2 points out of them or 1 point out of them, and they got 3. So, and they probably could have arguably got 6. But so it's an impressive start to the season. And BWP, who's just, you know, there are certain players that don't make sense to people who don't follow MLS, and it's just really, you know, their style fits the league. And BWP is a pure poacher goal scorer who has found a home in Major League Soccer, and just because he struggled in other leagues that don't necessarily fit his style does not speak badly of MLS. It's just like any league. There's going to be players that do better in some leagues than others, right? And he is a player that has absolutely become, you know, a star in Major League Soccer, and a brace performance on the weekend. I suspect he'll be the player of the week because of the brace rule. I don't know who I voted for, but I have a feeling I'm also not going to vote for the actual player of the week all season. It's going to be someone, you know, because I'm contrarian by my nature. But nonetheless, BWP is our Argent pick for the week.
And moving to our Ballon d'Or, and Duane, if this was a Major League Baseball podcast and we would be talking about a 50-50 club, it would be such an exclusive club. Nobody ever did 50 home runs and 50 stolen base in one season. When we're talking about Major League Soccer, we're talking about 50 assists and 50 goals in your Major League Soccer career. Pepa Federico Higuain joined the 50-50 club on Saturday.
Yeah. We talked last week about the underrated players and how we felt that Nacho Piatti was the obvious choice for that. Higuain would be the other one that I would put in that conversation for obvious, because in both cases they play in less fancied markets, you know, from a major U.S. media perspective, right? And I think that they both get sort of ignored a little bit more because of that. I would still say that Nacho is a little bit more ignored than Higuain, but certainly I think both of them don't get the full sort of deserving praise that they should get.
And for almost the same reasons. They're both very reserved, both very low profile, low key Argentinian players. Yeah, it's a very similar reason why they are not necessarily looked upon too, because they just do their own thing and they don't make any waves.
Yeah, and he had a double assist performance. So I didn't vote for Player of the Week simply because of the 50-50 thing. That's a bonus, and that may get more attention for him. He might have a chance to get a few first place votes because of that, I suspect. But again, it was 2 brilliant assists, bang, bang, like that. Columbus has started the season red hot. They are leading off where they left off last year, where they came damn close to taking Toronto in that Eastern Conference final. 1-0, Josie's 1 goal. That was the difference between the MLS Cup champions and Columbus last year. So we shouldn't be that surprised that they're starting well this year. And Higuain is a vital component to that team, and an absolute deserving pick for our player of the week, my player of the week pick. And that's, as I said, one of the most underappreciated players in the league week in, week out.
Quickly to finish the show list, we'll just talk about the scores of the actual games in Major League Soccer. New England NYCFC 2-2 on Saturday. FC Dallas 1, Portland 1. An important win for Dallas. Important point for Dallas. Same for Portland. Columbus 3, DC 1. The great two assists performance by Pippa. Red Bulls 3 versus Minnesota at home. Nothing. And Colorado versus Kansas City, a surprising result for Colorado. Or Kansas City able to score 2 goals on the road but can't defend to save their lives, unfortunately. A draw on the road 2-2. And the last game last night was Vancouver, LA. And I want to finish the show with this, Duane. Vancouver, LA. Felipe, he was a big acquisition by LA. And apparently Kyle Robinson has decided that Felipe is a defensive midfielder.
Well, there you go. Why not? Carl Robinson's, he makes some odd choices sometimes. That was the worst game I've seen in months, but nonetheless, the Whitecaps got a point, I guess. They have to look at it that way. Felipe is trying to look at him as an enforcer, I guess, but...
but he can't drop the gloves, so what's the point?
Yeah. He can irritate you. He is irritating. I mean, he's not Montreal anymore, so you can admit this now. He's kind of a bit of a he makes Donadell look like a choir boy. Nonetheless,
I'll take him in my team anytime, though. That's the thing. I'll take Felipe in my starting 11.
I take Donadell
every day.
So there you go. Maybe not as much anymore. I think he might be a little past it now. But
well, you'll see. Wait and see. He's just resting because it's turf. You'll see. Once we get on grass, Donadell is going to be back. But I want to just at least mention that off the end of the show. It's intriguing, the presence of Felipe. Why would you go get a guy that you're not even playing in his own position? We'll see. Maybe the real reason behind this was to get rid of Tim Parker, not to bring in Felipe. But that's something we'll be keeping an eye on for the rest of the year.
Well, Brek Shea, he's not the first time Carl Robinson has put a player out of position, right? So let's watch it carefully. And Vancouver has its own ideas about things sometimes, so we'll see. Look, we're kind of complaining about them a little bit because I don't believe them yet, but they have been getting results, so we can't discount that. And it was an awful game, just a terrible game to watch.
It was. It really was a terrible game, and nose of town, of course, against LA, against Vancouver. All right, that'll be all for today. As always, you can follow Duane on Twitter at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramee. We'll be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. with Gavin Day to talk more about the Canadian men's national team, to get more of anecdotes and real stuff that happened in Spain on Saturday. And as always, you can follow Duane on Twitter at 24th Minute, myself at Kev Laramee. You can find the on-demand version of every show we do at sportspodcastingnetwork.com or anywhere you get your podcasts. We are live Monday to Friday at 10 a.m. on our YouTube page, which is located at youtube.com/sportspodcastingnetwork. And I want to thank Pierre, Michael, Glad Matt, and all the newest contributors on Patreon over the last few days. We appreciate your pledge, your support, and your trust. And we will take this and bring it even further into the world of soccer. Thank you for your trust, and you can donate and take the pledge anytime you want at patreon.com. That's patreon.com/sportspodcastingnetwork. And of course, as always, I'm Kevin Laramee, and have a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.